toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance. Tonight our theme is the light of understanding. Spiritual illumination that transcends intellectual understanding. And I'd like to start with a couple of quotes from Hazrat Inayat Khan. Wisdom is born out of the meeting of the knowledge of the heavens and the knowledge of the earth. When the light from within is thrown upon this knowledge, then the knowledge from outer life and the light coming from within make a perfect wisdom. The guidance from the outer knowledge and the guidance from the inner intelligence are both necessary. If the inner light were enough, then humans would never have been created. They would have been angels. The soul of every individual is God, but the human has a mind and a body which contain God according to the accommodation. When the light from within is thrown upon this knowledge, then the knowledge from outer life and the light coming from within make a perfect wisdom. So let's think about light. There's so many kinds of light. There's the light from a lamp, there's the light from the sun, there's the light of inspiration, and the Sufis talk about many different kinds of light. One is called baqa, and this is the light beyond anything we can put a name on, a word, beyond existence. And alim is the light of the divine intelligence, and nur is the light of the angelic realm, and habir is the light that has been transformed by beings in manifestation by virtue of the wisdom gained in life. So it's the returning light. So there are all these different forms of light, but the essence of light is the same. It's just different ways of expression and manifestation. And each of us is a being of light. So we're beings of light, and on our spiritual journeys, we're seeking to understand the divine, however we think of the divine. We're seeking to understand how do we fit in with everything else. We're seeking to understand our relation with everything. And the Sufis talk about the spirit of guidance. We say that in the invocation. So the spirit of guidance is something that's always present. It's got different names in different traditions. I grew up in Judaism, and it's called the still small voice. It's called other names in different traditions, like I said. But it's that light that shines a direction for us. But that light requires something from us. It's not an imposing light. It just doesn't push something to us. There has to be something on our end, a desire. And what could that desire be? It could be many things. It could be a desire for understanding. It could be a question. It could be a desire for healing. Any number of things it could be. And so the spirit of guidance becomes operative in the relationship between what we think of as ourselves in existence and what we think of as the divine, which for many people initially seems to be something, or is thought of as something separate from us. There's the divine, there's God, there's us, and there may seem to be this huge gap in between, and we're seeking to come closer and closer. But in all actuality, and every mystical tradition says this, everything is an expression of that one. whatever that one might be called in a particular tradition. So each of us is a unique expression. And the Sufis say that creation occurred because God was a hidden treasure, desiring to be known, to love, and to be loved. And I was reflecting on this, and I think there could be an add-on to this, which to me seems to really fit. I would say that God was not only seeking to be known, but God was seeking to know. God was seeking to discover something about God's own nature that could only take place through a relationship with existence. And I'm not just talking about physical existence that we're familiar with. Every tradition talks about different subtle realms of being and divvied up in different ways. 14 realms, 7 realms, 3, the jinn realm, the angelic realm, and so on. But these are actually all different vibrational states of being, and they're not up there someplace. They're not separated in any way from right here, but there is a separation, but that separation is caused by the limitations of our understanding of ourselves and our capacity to experience more subtle aspects of a reality that is like a fish not knowing that it's in water. Well, we live in this ocean of divinity, of different vibrational states of divinity, and each different vibrational state corresponds to different types of beings. That's what forms those beings. They're made out of the vibrations of that state. So we could say angels are beings of a different vibrational state of light than human beings, but we're all beings of light. The light in the physical realm is denser, doesn't mean worse, it just means denser than in more subtle realms. And Hazrat Khan says that the human is the only being in all the universe who exists in every realm, which is a remarkable statement. And you might hear that and go, what? How could I exist in every realm? I'm here, I'm in the earth realm. Well, yes, that's where your consciousness is focalized, and that's where our conditioning has caused us to believe and not question, for the most part, that there could be any other realm of existence on which we simultaneously exist and which is never separated from right here. It's just not perceptible. You see the difference? And so the practices of different traditions in different ways help us to develop subtle senses of hearing, seeing, and so on. Subtle means of consciousness, because our usual state of consciousness is dualistic. I'm here, and I look around and I see all of you that are sitting here at this gathering tonight, and so it'd be easy for me to think, well, we're all separated. But the scientists say that everything in the universe is deeply interconnected. And the mystics say the same thing. Everything is interconnected. So we could read that and we could hear that, but in actuality, just knowing that or even believing that doesn't do much good to us unless we have a way of actualizing the possibilities that can occur through all of those interconnections. So what happens when we're in relationship with something else? Well, it could be very superficial. Hi, how are you? How was your day? Or look at that tree over there. But again, dualistic, separated understanding is based on concepts about what's coming in through the physical senses. And then we think, well, I get it, I understand everything because look, I've got it cataloged here, I've got books about it over there, so what else is there to know? Well, that is like the most basic level of relationship with the world. It's separate, okay? those of you who've been to classes here before, we've talked about something called Tawil, Tawil, which means harmonic perception. And it's experiencing the deeper reality of whatever we're communing with. Because Tawil doesn't take place, let's say it's with the rose, with you looking at the rose and going, well, that's pretty, it's red, it smells nice, oh, it's got some thorns on it. Again, you're cataloging, you're conceptualizing, maybe you have some emotional response to it, you like this one, you don't like that one. That's not Tawil. Tawil is a state in which you're able to experience the deeper reality, you could say the archetypal nature of the rose. But what's interesting about this, you couldn't possibly do that or experience that unless you had gotten into a higher state of vibration of your own being, or I should say a broader vibrational state that encompasses much more than the place that you started in. So now there's a circulation that transpires between you and that rose. Okay, so let's go back to interconnectedness. If we intentionally are relating to anything in the universe, whether it's present in the manifest realm, whether it's present in a subtle realm, whether it's a connection with a being who's gone on from the physical realm, and we're able to achieve that state of harmonic relationship, now there's a two-way circulation of light between us and what we're experiencing. And the circulation is not like a ping pong ball, but over there, back here, I can't make my hands do it because it's going on both ways all the time, and every part is changing every other part all of the time. And the interplay of those two kinds of light is now bringing forth something that was not there before. A new knowledge, a revelation. Okay. So we could think of, I was thinking of this earlier tonight, maybe this will help you understand what I'm trying to get across. Well, after the Big Bang, there was just basic subatomic particles, and later atoms, and then later molecules, and things like that. And then you could think about, well, you got the periodic table of the elements. So imagine now you've got some of every element in the periodic table, and you've got all the equipment you could want, and you can combine these however you want. Well, there's infinite possibilities of what could come from that. Just because you have the ingredients of what comprises those elements, you can't possibly take in everything that could happen. And some of those possibilities have never been until you put things together. So that's just a trivial example. Another example would be someone gives you a set of paints, and now you have 1 million tubes of paint of every color that humans can perceive. You go, oh, I don't need to make any art because I've got all the ingredients for everything that could be. Well, that's not very satisfying. Nothing's emerged from that. Nothing will emerge from that unless there's the person interacting with those and changing things along the way to produce something that was never there before. Okay? Well, the same is true of everything in the universe, and the same is true not just for us as the manifest beings, the same is true for however we think of the divine being. Couldn't possibly know all the things that could be until they became, and they can't become until there's a relationship with something in manifestation and the transcendent or the divine. So to me, it's an outdated notion of God just being this being that knows everything that ever has been, will be, and is unchanging. To me, that can't be a living God that's like that. So I think, I really think that God delights in the discoveries that we make. We have an aha moment, so does God, or however we think of God. So the whole universe is seeking to discover new possibilities. The universe is always self-organizing to a higher state of being. I've said this before. Seth Lloyd, who is a computer scientist at MIT, and this was in Scientific American, postulated that the universe is a giant quantum computer. There's a finite number, very large number of different fundamental units, like you think of different bits, and there's all the ways that these different bits could interplay with each other. And so he raises the question, again, this is in Scientific American, well, what's this quantum computer computing? And he said, itself. He essentially said the universe is trying to understand itself. And so all the things that arise are, you could say, being driven by this force that moves things towards self-organization, that moves towards a higher capacity of relationship and the wisdom that accrues from that relationship. Okay, so let me go back to the topic for tonight, the light of understanding. Many of you probably remember those Magic Eye books. Remember that you look at these pictures that just like a bunch of dots, and the instructions are offset your glance, and when you get it just right, a 3D image will emerge. And it's incredible when that happens. It's like it jumps out, and it's like, how did they fit this thing on this sheet of paper? And it's like this whole world opens up. So you could say, well, a light of understanding has dawned on you. Now you're able to perceive in a way that you couldn't before, that's opened new vistas of possibilities of perception. Okay? And whenever we have an aha moment, you could say the same is true. And think about challenging courses that you may have had in school or in college, and the teacher was trying to explain some principle. It could have been in math or science or almost any field, and it's like you're scratching your head, and then all of a sudden things gel and you get it. And then things become clear. You've gotten to a different level, and you could say, well, what helped you get from where you were to there? And you could say the light of understanding. You had to have the necessary ingredients. For one, you had to have the desire, oh, I'd like to understand this. I'd like to be able to make sense out of this. And you had to have a base of knowledge, otherwise you're not going to get it if you don't know anything about it. But you have all the raw ingredients, and then something crystallizes from that. So you could say the stages that we go through in our understanding in life are kind of like that. They're not linear, at least the progress moves in quantum leaps. And you can think of different times in your life when you thought perhaps you had everything all figured out, and then something comes along, and it could have been a tragedy, it could have been something really good or whatever, but it just shakes the foundations of how you assumed things were. And then you were in this in-between state where maybe you felt lost for a while, but things were self-organizing. Just like the caterpillars in the chrysalis, it liquefies before it can become the butterfly. And if the caterpillar were conscious when this was going on, it would probably freak out, wouldn't you? You liquefy it. Wait a minute. And you're telling me I'm going to turn into this? You're crazy. Okay. So, all right, so let me go on here. So what are some ways that facilitate this self-organization and for this light of understanding to take place? So in Sufis and different traditions, we talk about different qualities. The Sufis talk about the divine qualities, and there's many, many of them. So beauty is one of them, truth, compassion, joy, wisdom, and so on. And you could think of each of these qualities as a kind of organizing light. So usually we think of beauty as something has a property and it's beautiful, and now we're perceiving that beauty. And we go, wow, that's really beautiful. But what's taking place there, there's something that's being conveyed to us and something that's returning from us to what we're experiencing through the modality of beauty that opens up something in us. And it could be from looking at a work of art, it could be from hearing a poem or a piece of music, or our son's a scientist. I'm sure he gets this feeling when he makes a discovery and sees things that seemingly didn't have anything to do with each other, and now each one is shedding light on the other. In fact, one of the reasons that I thought about doing this class, I was listening to a podcast when I was walking recently, and the person was interviewing a mathematician, and I majored in math, and so, okay. And the woman mathematician was talking about something I'd never heard of before, and I couldn't explain it to you if I tried, but I sort of got what she was talking about. So she made some interesting discoveries about this kind of esoteric mathematical structure. But after she published her work, she started hearing from physicists and people in different fields going, wow, what you've discovered here helps to really shed light on what we've been trying to figure out about how this works. There's like this geometric structure she discovered that helped quantum physicists understand some things about what they were researching. And the researcher asked, the interviewer asked the mathematician, what is it that really turns you on in your work? And she said, what turns me on is when I make a discovery and I see two things that seem to be disparate and have nothing to do with each other, and I see when you can put them together in a certain way, a breakthrough takes place. And if I had to give a description of what turns me on, it would be exactly that. I delight in finding connections between things. And for years and years, it's been, for the most part, between science and spirituality. I'm an avid reader of science journals and things like that. And a lot of times I'll read about a discovery in science, then I'll meditate, well, how might this apply to spirituality? But sometimes it's vice versa. I'll have some real insight in spirituality and wonder how it applies to science. So a little story, a book that I wrote way back in 2004, I think it was published, was called, it's still in print, Upgrading the Operating System of the Soul, a Manual of Quantum Sufism. And before I published this book, this person named William Tiller, who is a professor emeritus from Stanford, who for years did research on subtle energy, but also, and he had a theory with a solid basis in physics, and he had astounding results. So I thought, well, I don't know if I'll ever hear from this person, but I wrote him, because he didn't do email, and I said, I gave some of my background. I've got some background in science, majored in math, and so on, but I've had some insights in meditation, and some of them were insights that I felt really applied to quantum physics. And I said, would you be willing to take a look at what I've written and tell me, basically I've gone off the deep end, whatever. And so I sent this off to him. I sent him a draft of my book. And I didn't hear anything. I thought, oh well. 6 months later, he writes me this really nice letter, and he was apologetic. He said, I'm so busy, and I finally had time for a vacation, and I was in Hawaii, and I read your book, and I filled up pages of my journal with inspirations I got from your book about the research that I'm doing. And I thought, this was so validating to me, because here I was getting these insights about, and I'll share one of them in a minute, about physics. They weren't coming from reading physics books or whatever, from my meditation, and he was saying, this really fits, this makes sense. So one of the insights I had was something that I described in the book as a jewel-like, I was talking about information fields, a jewel-like patterning information field that had a structure, but it wasn't like this solid thing. It was, moving, but it had it was a jewel-like nature. And years later, I read this article about the structure that I don't know if a mathematician discovered this, but it was this incredibly beautiful geometrical structure that they could apply the mathematics of all kinds of things in physics, and it would churn out simple ways to get solutions to problems that otherwise would be incredibly complicated. And I read about this, that this is exactly what I was experiencing in meditation. So this is an example, and we all have this capacity of turning to the inner light and posing a question and discovering something that you would never get to through the usual way. But again, you have to have some basis. If I didn't have any basis in science, I would have thought, well, this is pretty. I wouldn't have had any notion, well, what good is this? Anyway, that's just an example of that. Okay. So, for this light of understanding to take place, there has to be a relationship. It isn't going to take place through you feeling separated from whatever it is you're trying to experience or understand. And this is important too, you don't get lost in this relationship. You don't disappear. You're very much you, but you're not you separated and locked into a previous conception of how you are and how whatever it is you're experiencing is. There's this openness to change and transformation. Okay, so those are essential ingredients. Okay. So, Sufis talk about awakening. So, through this process, you awaken to a new frame of reference, which is multidimensional. It's not just limited to the 3 dimensions of space and one time. It's transtemporal. It's not limited to this moment in time. It incorporates past and future, and it also incorporates atemporal, things that are beyond time. And, well, this is like the fullest possibility of what can take place. So there could be subsets of this. It's non-local, which means you're able to have experiences that aren't taking place through a distance. There's interconnectedness, and if you've read any about entanglement, when 2 particles are entangled with each other, you can put them at the opposite end of the Milky Way, and you could flip the spin on one, and the other one will flip instantly, no change. I mean, it's way faster than light could. It might take light years to go from one to the other, but this change happens instantly. So in this entanglement, there's no separation in time or space. Okay. The spirit of guidance, which we talked about, can be a means of navigating through what? Through a space of new possibilities, through a space of discovering something that has not been. So it can also be discovering something that has been, but its revelation is discovering something that hasn't been there before. It's something that couldn't have been there before because it requires this unique interplay between the unique light of your being and the unique light of whatever it is that you are having an experience of. Okay? So I'm going to read you some juicy Pirvalaya quotes. Actually, this one, I'm not sure if this might be Hazrat Khan, but it's one or the other. There are different kinds of initiation that souls experience. I think this is Hazrat Khan. One is a natural initiation, a kind of natural unfoldment for which the soul cannot give any cause or reason, comes to a soul although no effort or attempt has been made by that soul to experience it. Sometimes this initiation comes after great illness, pain, or suffering. It comes as an opening up of the horizon. It comes as a flash of light, and in a moment the world seems transformed. It's not that the world has changed. It is that that person has become tuned to a different pitch. He or she begins to think differently, feel differently, see and act differently. Their whole condition begins to change. One might say of them that from that moment they begin to live. It may come as a vision, as a dream, as a phenomena, any of these forms. This is pure Vilayat. Let us now see how this attunement and perspective is going to affect our daily lives. We have not only been discovering unfamiliar perspectives, beaming new light upon our problems, but awakening dormant faculties. The shift in outlook triggers off transformation. Let us now consciously awaken the innumerable faculties governing the program of the whole universe that are dormant in ourselves. You can't fragment the universe. Well, you can, but it's an illusion, because each fragment carries a totality potentially in itself. You're not just a fraction of the universe, but the whole universe is potentially present within you. This is the first step. The second step is that it can be awakened. In awakening, we're highlighting action, transformation instead of just realization. All of a sudden, something happens to one. Perhaps you have the feeling as though you're absolutely flooded in life and radiant in light, I think. Our objective is to obtain illumination, but one can never attain it. It's an ongoing process. One's intelligence avails itself to be luminous. There are two catchwords in the spiritual realm. One is awakening and the other is illumination. What do they mean in terms of experience? The only way to know it is to experience it. Pure Mershadinat Khan said that as we evolve, passion is awakened in us for the unattainable. That is awakening. But illumination would be a passion for light. The cosmic code does not precede the existential universe. It is self-organizing itself and thereby discovering itself in the here and now. God hidden within His creation. So the Sufis talk about attunement, and there's many practices. Many of you are familiar with the purification breaths, elemental breaths, and they help to tune us, and different sound practices help to attune us. And so coherence is another way we could describe attunement, but here it's not just restoring a previous state of harmony, but enabling a higher state of emergence, a pull towards what the Sufis call baqa, which means rebirth or resurrection. So you see the difference. We get out of whack. I mean, it happens to all of us. We get frazzled, and then we recuperate and get back into balance, and that's wonderful. That's a good thing. But what I'm talking about here is engaging in this process with the spirit of guidance, the light of understanding, and bringing about coherence that helps us come to a higher state of being. So it's different from where we started. Okay? We participate in the light of understanding, and I mentioned this, by having an intention or a question. You then seed, S-E-E-D, a possibility to emerge by the interplay of the light you've received and how that light is transformed by the uniqueness of your being and the wisdom gained from your experiences in life. So, Diane and I have talked in the past, and in the Gabriel light work that we've been developing over the years, we've talked about something called the eliciting light of Sophia. So, back to the idea of God being this hidden treasure, desiring to be known, you can ask the question, okay, so God has been described as this infinite ocean of whatever, beyond any words or whatever. So what could have pulled this desire out from this infinite ocean? Well, in Proverbs, God consults with wisdom, which is the same as Sophia, in figuring out how creation's going to work. So something brought forth this desire from the divine being for there to be an existence in the first place. And I think that's what we call Sophia. And I think that eliciting light of Sophia is always present in us. It's a pull towards more, towards fulfilling our dharma, our purpose in life, by following through on the deepest desire of our heart, by engaging in a way of being that helps to bring about this coherence, this higher state of being. And so there's a pull towards that. And Pure Light would say the pull of the future is stronger than the push of the past. And he would talk about that which transpires behind that which appears. So we get our trip together, we get, we're grounded in life, we're dealing with what we need to take care of in life, we're not spacing out off somewhere. If anything, we're much more able and equipped to deal with all the challenges of life. But now we're in a state where more can come through from us in our way of being, engaging in awakening, moving towards illumination, which, as Pure Light said, is never can end. And in our invocation, we don't say arriving at the one, we say toward the one, because we couldn't possibly ever get to a final destination, because if we ever did or could, everything would grind to a halt and show's over, and so that, I don't believe that's the way existence works in any sense, whether we think of it as the transcendent or the manifest. I think there's always this further pull to new possibilities of what can become. And Pure Light would talk about our becoming capable of participating in the divine programming, and I might add to that, becoming capable of participating in the distillation of never-ending wisdom that can only come through our way of relating to whatever we are experiencing. So I've said before, talking about Gabriel the divine messenger, that I believe everything is Gabriel seeking to do what? Announce its unique divinity, to reveal its own unique divinity. Everything in existence is a unique expression of the divine, and so for existence to awaken, all these parts need to become capable of shining forth that unique light that can only come from each part, and the interplay of that light now is furthering the purpose of existence, is never-ending increase in wisdom and possibilities. Okay, and so that's perhaps a different definition of how we might think of what Dharma is, of purpose, not only individual but collective. So you could say Gabriel's the bringer of the message, Sophia is the pull towards revelation, and each of us has Gabriel within us, and each of us experiences Sophia when we engage in relationship in this way that pulls something from us, and whatever we're engaging with is also feeling that pull from us, from the unique outcome of what can take place for that relationship, that light to take place between the two sides. So this is Hazrat Khan. The spirit of guidance may be called, in other words, the divine mind. And as the human mind is completed after its coming on earth, so the divine mind is completed after manifestation. In fact, the Creator's mind is made out of His own creation. I'll read that again. The Creator's mind is made out of His own creation. Everyone listening to this is part of the divine mind. It is the soul of Christ and the spirit of prophecy. Intuition, inspiration, vision, and revelation all come from the same source whence every kind of revelation comes, and that is the divine mind. Indeed, divinity is that aspect of God which emanates from God and forms itself into the spirit of guidance. The spirit of guidance may thus be called the heart of God, a heart which is the accumulator of all feelings, impressions, thoughts, memories, and of all knowledge and experience. The spirit of guidance is the light of God, which may be likened to a lantern that the farmer carries when walking on the farm in the darkness of night. It is like a searchlight which shows up any object upon which it is thrown, and so when the light of the spirit of guidance is thrown upon any aspect of life, a person receives a keen insight into it. This light is not external to us, but dwells within. In the spirit of guidance, one finds a living God active in the heart of every person. And just a little bit more. The sacred scriptures, though diverse in their outward forms, point to this singular light. If truth is one, wisdom is one. If human personality is one, if God is one, then what are they if not the same spirit? Those who saw them, he's talking about the great beings throughout history, have called them Buddha or Krishna, but they were all one and the same lantern, the same light, although in different globes. This unified light is what is meant by the Christ Spirit. The Spirit of Christ is the illuminated soul. The Spirit of Christ can be traced in Christ's own words when he said, "I am Alpha and Omega. I am first and last." By this he meant, I was before Jesus was born, and I shall be after Jesus is gone. Indeed, Christ identified himself with the Spirit of guidance instead of with the personality which was known as Jesus. Those who see this Christ Spirit in all the various globes which are the light, they are the ones who really see Christ. In essence, the light and the spirit of guidance are two manifestations of the same divine reality, leading us to understand that the soul is light, the mind is light, and the body is light of different grades, and it is this relation which connects the human with the planets and the stars. So may the message of God reach far and wide. And may we continually feel the blessings that are present all the time in any circumstance, the downpouring of light and spirit, the outpouring of grace. Amen.